Iran has just changed the meaning of every major American base in the Gulf. For decades, Washington looked at Al Udeid in Qatar, the Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, Camp Arifjan and Ali Al Salem in Kuwait, Al Dhafra in the United Arab Emirates, and Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia, and saw power, runways, fuel, radar, command centers, warehouses, ports, thousands of personnel positioned close enough to respond quickly. But proximity works in both directions. The same locations that allow the United States to strike Iran also give Iran a fixed map of where American power must be defended. And after repeated Iranian missile and drone attacks across Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, Jordan, and other regional states, that map no longer looks like a network of launch pads. It looks like a network of obligations. That does not mean the bases are useless. It does not mean Iran can destroy them all, and it does not mean American air defenses have failed. The deeper point is more dangerous. Iran does not need to eliminate every base. It only needs to force Washington to protect all of them at the same time. Because once every runway, radar, fuel farm, port, and housing area becomes a possible target, the American advantage begins to carry a hidden cost. The more bases Washington uses, the more places it must defend. And that is how a system built to project power can become a system that absorbs power. To understand what changed, start with the old model. American strategy in the Gulf was built around forward presence. The logic was simple. Do not wait for a crisis and then move an entire military across the world. Place command centers, aircraft, ships, logistics units, missile defenses, and pre-positioned equipment close to the likely battlefield. Al Udeid became the largest American military installation in the region and a forward headquarters for U.S. Central Command. It also hosts the Air Operations Center that helps coordinate missions across the Middle East. Hala, Bahrain became the home of U.S. Naval Forces Central Command and the Fifth Fleet, the organization responsible for American naval operations across the Gulf, the Arabian Sea, and nearby waterways. 3. Kuwait became a logistics platform. Camp Arifjan supports the reception, staging, and onward movement of forces. In plain English, it helps move people and equipment into the theater. Al Dhafra supports a diverse American combat air wing in the United Arab Emirates. Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia supports air power, surveillance, and air defense operations. 6. In peacetime, this is an extraordinary advantage. A crisis begins, and the United States is already there. Aircraft do not need to fly from North America for every mission. Ships do not need to wait weeks for access. Fuel, spare parts, communications, and commanders are already connected. This is what a base network does. It compresses time. But the entire model was built during an era when the United States could assume that most regional opponents would struggle to strike those bases accurately, repeatedly, and simultaneously. That assumption has now weakened. Iran has spent years building the exact tools required to attack a forward-based system: ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, one-way attack drones, mobile launchers, and the ability to launch from several directions. The Defense Intelligence Agency has described Iran as possessing the largest missile force in the Middle East, including systems capable of reaching targets across the region. So the strategic map has flipped. America built bases to reduce the distance to Iran. Iran built missiles to exploit the distance to those bases. The common belief is that a base becomes a liability only when Iran can destroy it. That is the wrong standard. A modern military base is not one target. It is a system of systems. The runway allows aircraft to launch. Fuel storage keeps them flying. Radar provides warning. Command centers assign missions. Communications connect the base to the wider force. Warehouses hold weapons and spare parts. Power and water keep everything functioning. Housing concentrates personnel. A port or airfield can survive an attack and still lose lose part of its military value. This is the difference between destroying a base and producing a mission kill. Iran does not need to flatten Al Udeid. It needs to interrupt the sortie cycle. It does not need to sink the Fifth Fleet headquarters. It needs to force ships, staff, and support functions to disperse or operate on the constant alert. It does not need to occupy Camp Arifjan. It needs to disrupt the logistics rhythm that moves equipment forward. A cratered runway can be repaired. A damaged radar can be replaced. A fuel fire can be contained. But each repair takes time, people, equipment, and protection. And during that period, Washington has fewer options. This is why low-cost drones matter even when most are intercepted. Iranian drones can be launched in waves. They can approach at low altitude. They can be mixed with ballistic and cruise missiles. They can be sent toward military targets, civilian infrastructure, or both. The purpose is not always to score one spectacular hit. The purpose can be to create uncertainty. Which object is the real threat? Which base needs the interceptor? Which radar must remain active? Which runway should be cleared? Which aircraft should be moved? CSIS observed during Iran's 2026 campaign that drones were used across multiple Gulf states, not only to cause damage, but also to force defenders to spend expensive interceptors against relatively cheap attacking systems. Well, that matters because defense is not just a technical contest, it is an allocation contest. Every Patriot battery sent to one base is not defending another location. Every interceptor fired tonight is one fewer available tomorrow. Every aircraft moved to safety is an aircraft not immediately generating combat power, and this creates the first major liability. Iran can make Washington spend resources even when Iran's weapons miss. Now we reach the best point. The real vulnerability is not any single base. It is the number of bases. If Iran attacked only Al Udeid, Washington could concentrate defenses around Qatar. If it attacked only Bahrain, the United States could surge naval and air defense assets toward the Fifth Fleet headquarters. If it attacked only Kuwait, the Pentagon could reinforce Camp Arifjan and Ali al-Salem. But Iran has demonstrated the ability and willingness to strike or threaten several host countries in the same campaign. Reuters reported Iranian attacks involving Gulf states that host American military facilities, including Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait. AP separately reported renewed Iranian strikes across those states as fighting resumed. That changes the mathematics. The United States must now ask not, can we defend this base? It must ask, can we defend every critical node at the same time for an unknown number of weeks while continuing offensive operations? Those are very different questions. Air defense is layered, but it is not infinite. There are long-range systems, shorter-range systems, electronic warfare, fighter patrols, naval interceptors, hardened shelters, decoys, and rapid repair teams. Together, they can stop a large percentage of incoming threats, but no defensive network provides perfect coverage against unlimited attacks from different directions. A June 2026 CSIS assessment estimated that coalition defenses intercepted up to 90% of Iranian attackers during the conflict, while noting that the remaining leakage still caused billions of dollars in damage to bases and fixed infrastructure. It also found little evidence that Iranian attacks had fully stopped American operations. And that is the nuance. The bases remained useful, but keeping them useful became expensive. The United States had to defend them, repair them, move assets, replace interceptors, protect civilians, and reassure host governments. Iran's strategic achievement was therefore not total destruction. It was cost imposition. A base that survives only because Washington continually pours scarce defenses into it may still be a military asset, but it is also a strategic drain. And when attacks are spread across several countries, the drain grows faster than the physical damage. There's another problem. Bases are visible. Iran does not need classified intelligence to know where the major runways, ports, fuel farms, and command compounds are. Commercial satellite imagery can reveal expansion, aircraft parking patterns, construction, air defense positions, and repair activity. A fixed base can harden its shelters. It can build redundancy. It can add decoys, but it cannot hide its geography. This creates a targeting rhythm. Iran can watch. Iran can wait. Iran can launch when aircraft are concentrated, when a runway is busiest, when defensive systems are repositioning, or when political pressure is highest. The United States understands this problem. That is why the Air Force developed Agile Combat Employment, or ACE. ACE is designed to reduce dependence on large traditional bases by dispersing aircraft, crews, and support equipment across a wider network of operating locations. Air Force doctrine states that dispersal complicates enemy targeting by redistributing forces among multiple locations or within a base. 11. That doctrine is an admission of the new reality. Concentration creates efficiency, dispersion creates survivability, but the two goals pull in opposite directions. A giant base is efficient because fuel, maintenance, weapons, intelligence, and command functions are together. A dispersed force is harder to target but harder to supply. It needs more transport aircraft, more trained teams, more secure communications, more fuel points, more spare parts in more places, more agreements with more governments. Iran's missile and drone campaign forces Washington toward this less efficient model. That is the second major liability. Even when Iran cannot destroy American air power, it can force American air power to operate in a more complicated and expensive way. The base network was designed to make war easier for the United States. Iran's goal is to make the network itself difficult to use. But the military problem may not be the biggest problem. The political problem is harder. American bases in the Gulf do not sit on American territory. They sit inside sovereign states with their own populations, economies, and survival calculations. Qatar hosts Al Udeid, but Qatar also depends on energy exports, aviation, investment, and its reputation as a mediator. Bahrain hosts the Fifth Fleet, but it also has a small territory, dense infrastructure, and limited room to absorb repeated attacks. Kuwait hosts major logistics and air facilities, but Iranian strikes have also threatened civilian power and water systems. The UAE has spent decades presenting itself as a safe global business and tourism hub. Saudi Arabia wants American protection, but it also wants economic transformation and regional stability. When Iran attacks a base, the host government does not experience the event as a purely American military problem. Its airspace may close, flights may be cancelled, insurance costs may rise, foreign workers may leave, investors may pause, civilian infrastructure may be hit by debris, interception failures, or deliberate attacks. In July 2026, the European Union Aviation Safety Agency warned airlines to avoid or exercise heightened caution across airspace, including Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE, and the Gulf of Oman as the conflict intensified. That is strategically important. Iran can use attacks on American facilities to transfer the costs of U.S. policy onto U.S. partners. The message to Gulf governments is simple. Hosting American power may bring protection, but it also brings exposure. This creates what we might call the host country trap. Washington needs access to regional bases to fight effectively. But the more Washington uses those bases against Iran, the more Iran can punish the countries providing access. Those governments then face pressure to impose restrictions. They may limit which missions can launch from their territory. They may refuse certain weapons. They may demand advanced consultation. They may quietly ask the United States to relocate aircraft or reduce visible deployments. Iran does not need to defeat the American military to weaken the base network. It can attack the political permission that makes the network possible, and permission is harder to defend than a runway. This brings us to the third liability, the cost of protection. Modern missile defense is impressive. It is also expensive and limited. A defender cannot judge success only by the number of incoming weapons destroyed. It must also ask what it spent, what remains in inventory, and what other theaters now have fewer defenses. The Government Accountability Office has warned that demand for missile defense exceeds available capacity and that adversaries can impose costs by developing cheaper or more numerous offensive missiles. 13. Iran's drone strategy fits this logic. A one-way attack drone does not need to outperform an advanced interceptor. It only needs to create a credible threat. The defender then faces a bad choice. Fire an expensive interceptor and accept the cost, or hold fire and accept the risk. Now repeat that choice across Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, ships at sea, and civilian infrastructure. Then repeat it night after night. This is not simply a contest of weapons. It is a contest of magazines. Who runs short first? Who can replace missiles faster? Who can sustain alert levels longer? Who can keep crews rested? Who can repair damaged sensors? Who can reassure 5 governments at once? Iran's advantage is not that every drone gets through. Its advantage is that every drone demands a decision, and decisions consume attention. A military defending many fixed locations can become reactive. Instead of choosing where to apply power, it spends more time responding to alarms, moving assets, closing airspace, and protecting infrastructure. The network still projects power, but it also begins to dictate American priorities. None of this means Iran has solved the military problem. American bases remain heavily defended. U.S. forces have intercepted large numbers of missiles and drones. American aircraft and ships continue to conduct operations, and Iran pays a serious price when launchers, radar sites, and command facilities are struck. So the correct framework is not that the base network has become worthless. It is that the network has changed from a mostly offensive advantage into a contested system that must fight for its own survival. Washington has several responses. First, disperse. Move aircraft and support teams among more locations. Use highways, smaller airfields, and temporary operating sites. Keep fewer high-value assets parked together. Second, harden. Build more shelters. Add runway repair equipment. Separate fuel and ammunition. Create backup command centers. Use decoys and camouflage. Third, layer the defense. Combine Patriots and other missile defense systems with fighters, naval interceptors, electronic warfare, directed energy systems where available, and cheaper counter-drone weapons. Fourth, move some power farther away. Long-range bombers, submarines, aircraft carriers outside the narrow Gulf, and bases beyond the immediate missile envelope reduce dependence on the closest installations. But every solution has a cost. Dispersion makes logistics harder. Hardening takes years and billions of dollars. More defenses require more interceptors and trained crews. Moving farther away increases flight time, tanker demand, and operational strain. And reducing the visible American presence may alarm partners who built their security around that presence. This is why there is no clean answer. The United States cannot simply abandon the bases without losing speed, access, and influence. But it cannot use them as though the old sanctuary still exists. Iran has turned geography into leverage. Washington's challenge is to keep the network useful without letting the network become a collection of hostages. So what happens next? Watch 3 signals. Tripwire 1 is American dispersal. If the United States begins moving aircraft, command functions, and logistics away from the largest hubs into smaller locations, that would confirm the Pentagon believes the fixed base threat is now structural, not temporary. Do not focus only on troop numbers. Watch where the aircraft fuel, radars, and repair teams go. Tripwire 2 is host government restriction. If Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, the UAE, or Saudi Arabia publicly or quietly limits which American operations can use its territory, Iran will have achieved a political effect larger than the physical damage from any single strike. The most important attack may be the one that changes a basing agreement. Tripwire 3 is the interceptor balance. Watch for emergency transfers of Patriot, THAAD, naval, or counter-drone systems into the region. Watch for new production orders. Watch for signs that the United States is pulling defensive assets from Europe or Asia. That would show that the Gulf War is no longer consuming only money, it is consuming strategic flexibility elsewhere. And that is the final danger. A base network can protect one region while weakening options in another. If Washington must concentrate scarce defenses in the Gulf, China, Russia, and North Korea are also watching. So why has Iran made every American base in the Gulf a liability? Not because Iran can destroy every installation, not because American defenses are powerless, and not because forward bases no longer matter. Iran has made them liabilities because it has changed the cost of using them. Every base now creates two missions: the mission launched from the base and the mission required to protect the base itself. Every additional location gives Washington reach, but it also gives Tehran another point of pressure, another runway to threaten, another radar to saturate, another host government to frighten, another interceptor magazine to drain, another political relationship to test. That is the strategic reversal. For decades, American bases compressed distance and gave Washington control of escalation. Now Iran is using missiles, drones, and regional geography to make that same proximity expensive. The bases still project power, but they also absorb it. And in a long war, the side that forces its opponent to defend everywhere may not need to dominate anywhere. That is the logic behind the headline. If this video helped you see the Gulf through a different strategic framework, subscribe to the channel. The headlines change, but the logic does not. And I will see you in the next video.